Hey, welcome to Black People Die by Suicide 2, our new set. You've probably noticed that we've had some changes with our set over, the past few months and throughout the episodes, but this is our new home, our new setup, the new aesthetic, as the kids say. So we just wanted to film this and let you all know that, the set's going to be consistent. We were just kind of playing around to see what we liked, and this is what we got.
Yeah, I know. And for me as a person, as a marketing, communications, branding, that's my thing. I was like, Lord, I know what those people probably like. What is black? Is white?
It's green,
Is
it's grass.
green? What is grass? What is going on, y'all? But no, we really did like listen to your concerns because there were a few DMs that came in that people asked about and just offering feedback on how we can improve the podcast. So just know that we're always open for feedback. So like anything, you can send us a DM or you can send an email to info@blackpeoplediebysuicide2.org. We always want to improve the podcast, and so we're happy that this is our new home. We think it looks great. Shout out to Digital Empath because they're doing an awesome job. So we are we're very excited. So we just ask that y'all bear with us. The one of the things that I've learned from this process is being open, because I initially remember when we first started the podcast, Leon would ask questions like, do you want this? Do you want that? I don't know, Leon. And so one of the things that I learned is that to start something, if you have something that you want to do, just start it. It does not have to be perfect, and you don't have to have it all figured out. There are so many things that you will learn along the way. And there are, as we've been recording and having guests and doing all of the everything related to the podcast, I've been learning like, okay, this is what I like. This is what I don't like. This is what I want to improve. So that is something that this process have also taught me, because I can tend to be a bit of a perfectionist. Jordan knows, she works with me. So we hope that you all enjoy the set. So before we will begin to have our first episode that you will see with this wonderful set, will be with the amazing Dr. Rita Walker. She will kick off. So, but for now, we have some episodes that were pre-recorded. So I'm just letting y'all know, when y'all see this, we putting this out now for y'all so we can address the changes
Right,
in the set.
right.
But y'all gonna get some white background and some grass. And then once the grass is over, then you gonna get this set.
Yes, we again, as Takia said, we're so open to feedback. Y'all, I'm gonna try to talk louder, Lord. My mom calls me mouse mouth. She say I talk like wee, 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 wee. So I'm gonna try to do better and project if you couldn't hear me. But yeah, so this is the new set. I hope you like the way it looks. I think it looks beautiful. It's aesthetically pleasing. So
Yes. So thank you all for bearing with us. Thank you so much for supporting us. We are so grateful. We ask that you continue to support us. Our goal for 2024 is to grow our YouTube channel. It's YouTube is a beast, but we are determined to make sure that our channel continues to grow so that we can get this content out and help change the world. So thank you so much for supporting us, you all.
The information presented in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not meant to be a substitute for clinical mental health treatment. If you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, please dial 988 or head to your nearest emergency room.
Welcome to another episode of the Black People Die by Suicide 2 podcast, where we discuss all things mental health with the emphasis on suicide in the Black community. I'm your co-host, T-Kea, or Kia.
I'm your co-host, Jordan.
Yay! So each episode, we do a wellness check because we want to encourage everyone to just really be honest about how we're feeling and what's going on with us. And so, because I think we talked about before in the previous episode where we were saying how we would be like, oh, how I'm doing, I'm fine, but you're not really fine.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I always say feelings I'm not expressing. So, for this wellness check, Jordan, how are you doing, girl?
You know what? I'm okay today. I don't want to date this episode, but this is a rough season for me. It's almost the 15th anniversary of my father's death, and I'm just trying to process it all, take it all in. Grief is definitely one of the. You know what? Let me back up because I promised that I was not going to like and y'all to death because I listened to the last episodes and I'm like, ooh, I say a lot. Sorry about that. I say like a lot. I'm going to try to catch myself this
We're
episode.
working on it.
Yeah. So it's the 15th anniversary of my father's death, and it's been hard. It's definitely one of the leading causes of my mental health struggles.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in a weird season right now, but other than that, I think I'm holding it together pretty well. Haven't really had any sad thoughts yet. It's coming up soon, so I'm just trying to stay present, let the feelings come,
Mm-hmm.
roll with the punches, and hopefully I can get through this season. His death is like right around Father's Day every single year, if not falls on Father's Day itself. It's a lot, but we're going to get through it. We're going to get through it. How are you doing?
What a fine time to bring up grief,
Oh
right?
boy, yeah.
I have some fresh grief going on over here. How I'm feeling, I'm okay right now. I definitely have my moments. So, some of you may or may not know, but I just lost my great grandmother. Um, and it's challenging, but there is comfort in the fact that my great grandmother was 92 years old, and like, it's such a blessing to be able to have had the opportunity to know a great grandparent. And so, even though, yes, it's sad, I'm also in a space of gratitude because I had her for my whole life. Well,
Mhm.
up until now.
Right.
Um, and so I'm very fortunate that I was able to have some time with her. So yes, it's hard, but 92 is a very long life. And I'm definitely going to miss her. So I'm definitely in a space where I have to do a lot of work surrounding grief. Just because, as you know, I've lost four people within the past year and a half,
Yeah.
and so it's been back to back and it's been very hard. I'm dealing with a lot of anger, like the day of the funeral. So the funeral was on Thursday, and I felt like punching a wall. Like, I was sad, but I was also mad. And I don't think it was just my great grandmother's death. I think it's a combination,
Mm.
like, of, like, I guess, like a compound
Right.
of grief in terms of multiple people.
Right.
But for my great grandmother, and I think that it's just, again, it's just a combination of,
Right.
like, my sister and then my uncle, and it's just all coming together. So the biggest emotion that I've been dealing with is anger. Like,
Mhm.
I'm easily irritable, and a lot of it has to do with grief. So I understand that I have to do a lot of work surrounding grief, death. What does death mean to me? What are my thoughts on the afterlife? Like, all of this stuff, I have so much work to do surrounding that. So I feel like lately I've been in a space of just trying to work through the grief, but also giving myself permission to feel the emotion of anger, because people, you often think someone's sad, but for me, it's definitely been a lot of anger. So that's how I'm feeling.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's a normal part of grief. I don't remember the fifth stage, but I know it's like uh
It's like feel,
denial,
bark,
anger,
then you're like bargaining,
bargaining,
depression,
depression, and acceptance, I think are the five. But that
and
might
then
not quite
and
be the
anger.
order.
Right? It may not be the organ, but anger is
Yes.
definitely a stage of grief. And boy, do I be angry.
I've been through all the steps with the exception of acceptance. You know what? Well, that's not true. I've accepted it and then I go right back. I'm sure grief probably is not a linear process. It
Right.
has to be, I'm sure you can circle back to some prior steps, but yeah, I it's a rough time for me, but that kind of segues us into our episode today.
Yes.
We're going to talk about the importance of self-care and also trying to reframe like what self-care is.
Mhm.
So we thought this would be a good episode because for black people and especially black women, we suffer from a lot of adverse health outcomes and conditions, and that can lead to a lot of stress. There's also the pressure to always, we talked about this in a prior episode, the pressure to always take care of others and to put,
Mhm.
prioritize our relationships or our children, jobs, the community. It's always taking care of someone else. And it's important that we take the time to care for ourselves as well. To give y'all a little quote. This is from Oladara Adeo. I might be saying her name improperly, but she's an author. And it says, for so long, racism and sexism, aka misogynoir, told black women that we cannot sit down and rest because we must work twice as hard to be respected and rewarded.
Mhm.
And for black women, self care isn't just manicures and massages, though it can include them. It is about activities that aid our self preservation in a world that is structured to oppress us. It is preventative care.
Whew.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that? I thought that was so deep.
You know what? I feel like the whole part of preventative care, because a lot of times people think about self care sometimes as an afterthought, like
Mm,
after I'm burnt out, after I'm depressed, you know?
right, right.
And it's like self care really is doing little things every single day that impact your overall wellness. And so I think when I think about self care, one of the things that come to mind is rap.
Right. Yes.
So
Yes.
I guess they're like, what's rap?
What's rap?
So RAP is WRAP and it stands for Wellness Recovery Action Plan. And it is a self care and wellness plan that really is extremely detailed. And I first took RAP initially because I was pursuing my peer certification. And it was really life changing for me to the point where I decided to become a facilitator. And it's great because it gets you thinking about self-care holistically. So like, what do I need to do every single day to stay well? What do I need to do sometimes to stay well? Like, what are my wellness tools? How what do I look like when I'm doing well? What does a crisis look like?
Mhm.
What support systems do I need in place to kind of help me? And that's really, I think, for me, when I started looking at self-care, like in different buckets. And so I think when it comes to self-care, we really have to think about doing it's the small things every day. Like, okay, am I, eating enough? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I resting or saying no or having boundaries, things like that. And I feel like a lot of times we just give self-care afterthought, which is the point of self-care is to try to preserve,
Right.
you know?
Right. And I'm glad you mentioned that it can be small things that kind of add up every day because, especially with social media, we see self care as something that is costly. You know what I'm saying? And
Hmm.
we living in times now where, let's be real, food is high, gas is high, housing is high, everything's expensive. And self care doesn't have to be something that is cost prohibitive. So we'll see people, getting these nice massages and taking trips to
Bubble
different.
bath
Yes.
with the
Yes.
candles and
Yes.
the roses.
Self care can be simple things. You don't have to do something elaborate to engage in a self care activity. It could really be something small every day. It could be something as simple as, I don't know, taking 5 minutes of your day to just do some deep breathing and really like recenter yourself. Doesn't have to be something complicated, doesn't have to be something expensive. But I think it is important, like you said, to do something small every day is kind of maintenance. And also, the cool thing about rap that I really appreciated is like the section where it will say, these are the signs that I might not be doing so well.
Right.
Because it really makes you tap into or pay attention to your, I guess, signs that you might start getting more, I don't know, depressed or
When
you're
things, it's a section called When Things Are Breaking Down.
right. Yes.
Hmm.
And it kind of will get you, I guess, in tune with yourself to know, uh-oh, X is happening, so I must be getting ready to go down a path of feeling more depressed. I guess it'll help you catch things early, preventative, as opposed to trying to implement something when there is a crisis.
Right.
Might be able to prevent the crisis. So I thought that was cool and something to think about too.
Yeah, and when I think about self-care, so I am for the most part, now I'm in a season where I'm like transitioning, trying to get back on track in terms of like traveling and grief. But typically, when I'm feeling the most balance is when I'm following, like, so RAP also has this daily maintenance plan. So think about things you need to do every day to stay well. So for me, that looks like going to bed on time.
Mm.
Like having a bedtime is also self-care,
Yes.
and waking up at the same time every single day. So for me, it's like, okay, I'm going to bed at typically by 7:30, 8 o'clock. I believe my phone goes on do not disturb. And then I'm up at 4. I'm at the gym by 5. And then when I'm done working out, I come home, I shower, then I like pray. I'll do my guided meditation. I'll do my gratitude list or read an affirmation card. Then I'll have breakfast and then I start working. So from like
Mm-hmm.
4 to like 8 o'clock, that's 4 hours just for T-Kea before Takia starts working and responding to emails and text messages and just giving so much of myself. And people are like, "Oh my God, like how could you, how can you get up that early or why do you do that?" But at the same time, regardless of what someone's self-care plan or schedule may look like, the most important thing is making sure that you are filling like your cup up first. And we talk about, like they say, like, oh, don't give from an empty cup, but I think it's even deeper than that. How about you don't give from your cup at all and you give from your overflow? So
Mm.
if you are keeping your cup full so much to the point that you're overflowing into another cup. And so like I remember Gerald Lee had asked me one time because I was telling her, I was like, I am exhausted. I'm tired. I got all this going on. And she said, well, Takia, are you giving from your cup or your overflow? And at that moment, I knew I was not giving from my overflow. I was like, oh, girl, you're giving from your cup. And so I like to think about it that way because for me, that means that everything that I have in my cup is like for me. So then I am operating at my best capacity opposed to giving from my cup. That's kind of how I look at it.
Shout out to Jerry Lee. I met her at the NAMI walk last month on the 20th. And that was a tip. I had never heard that actually, to give from your overflow. I'm gonna have to incorporate that into my life. Shout out to Jerry Lee. Jerry Lee, if you're watching this, I appreciate you.
No, no, no. It was me who said it, but Gerald Lee was holding me accountable.
Jerry Lee still shout you out. So yes, we love it. That is a fantastic tip though. I will definitely keep that in mind. I never thought about it that way.
Hmm.
I know for me, one of the biggest things for self care that I've learned over the past like year or so is my dog Lucy. Her government name is Lucinda Moore, but there's a story behind that. But we call her Lucy, and she loves to go walking. She's a little chunk monster. I have to post her on Instagram or
She
something so y'all
does.
can see her. But she loves people. She loves walking, and I try to get her out, and I realized like over the past couple of years how healing the sun on my skin feels. Is that crazy? Like I something about being out in nature is very recentering for me.
It's grounding.
Yes, thank
Hmm.
you. Yes, that was the word I was looking for. I appreciate that. Um it's been so healing just to go outside. A lot of times I'll have my headphones on, but I'm trying to be more intentional about going outside and just listening to the sounds of nature, like the birds chirping,
Mm-hmm.
the trees, you know, blowing in the wind. And I found that to be really helpful. Something simple, something I have to do anyway. I mean, we have a dog door, but Lucy does love to go walking. So I try to get her out. And it can really be something simple. You just taking the time, even when you're, I don't know, doing the dishes or something. There's definitely things that you can do if you feel like you're pressed for time that will contribute to your own self care.
Yeah, I mean, it's simple things like even if you take 5 minutes a day to write down what you're grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
Studies show that practicing gratitudes help decrease depression and anxiety symptoms. It enhances happiness. Like that's something so small, and people always say like, "Oh, I don't have time for self-care." And the thing is, when going back to what you said about things being so elaborate, like people think in terms of like trips, hair done, nails done, all of those things are great. And I'm not saying that they can't be for self-care. But when you give, if you're finding that you're going on all these trips and you're getting your hair done and your nails done and you're still feeling depressed, that means you have to address what's going on beneath the surface. And a lot of times I feel like on social media, you know, it does a great job at glamorizing self-care,
Mm-hmm.
but self-care is sometimes not always pretty. Like it could actually go into therapy to address your trauma. You know, that's self-care, but it don't feel good.
Right, exactly.
So I think that we really have to change the way that we look at it. Like I said, going back to little things that you do, you know, every single day, having a bed routine. Some people, like for me, I am, you know, playing my water sounds and my ambient sounds so I can, it kind of helps bring me down. Having my morning routine, I notice a difference when I'm off track. Like when I'm not working out, I notice that like my mood is off. I don't have as much energy. So it's like all of those things. And for me, I always tell myself, like, I can take care of the outer appearance, but what good is my, and don't get, I love getting my nails done. I'm getting them done this week. But like what good is having my nails or my hair done but I'm still broken and depressed?
Right.
Cuz that means that I'm getting up every day and we all do it. We put on the front, we dress well, we act like everything is okay, but we still feel broken and depressed on the inside. And it's like I don't I don't want that.
Right. And I think too, with vacations and things like that, taking trips to beautiful places, that doesn't necessarily mean that when you return home, like all of your problems are going to be gone. They'll
Right.
still be there. You'll
Right.
still have to address these things. So it's important to do a lot of inner work. Again, like you said, whether that be with the help of a therapist, whether that be medication, definitely addressing the root problem because you really can't outrun those things. It'll be right there waiting for you again.
Because I remember talking to someone, and they were like, "I don't," you know, a few people like, "Oh, I don't have money for self care," and it's like there are, like, even with rap, it says when we talk about wellness tools should be simple, safe, and free.
Ooh,
So
more rap. I love rap.
I know I need to offer a rap
You
training.
should. You definitely should.
But it's like it's helpful because then it makes you think that you don't have to have this. Don't get me wrong, me and Jordan love to travel.
Yes.
We do, but we it's impossible to travel every single day.
Yes.
Like we have other responsibilities. So until you can go on that vacation, what are the small things that you're doing? So I think about like I love going outside walking. Like
Mm-hmm.
like that's something that I love doing. I love going outside and just simply walking. I'll listen to music or a podcast. Um, Using the Calm or the Headspace app to do
Mm-hmm.
guided meditation. Um, and talk about listening to podcasts for some, that could be a form of self care for some people. watching TV, knitting, exercise, any sort of hobbies that you might enjoy, pole dancing or whatever. Um, those things. And I think about it because there are things, for instance, for me, there are things that I do every single day that really does help me. And of course, there are moments life happens and I get off track, but for the most part, there are things that I tend to do every single day to stay well. Like I do my best to drink a half gallon of water per day, getting a certain number of grams of protein per day, working out at least 5 days a week, taking my medication every day, trying to make sure that I am actually even having days of rest
Oh,
because when you talk when you talk about, just resting, like as a person who is an overachiever, I tend to sometimes just always put so much stuff on my plate, and I have to tell myself that self-care is also having days to do absolutely nothing.
yes, yes. I'm glad you mentioned that because America, we're a grind culture anyway. Like we
Hmm.
value working hard, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? That's the American dream. And I feel like that's even more emphasized for black people and especially black women because again, like we mentioned earlier, there's always this pressure to always be on, to be taking care of everybody, to be booked, to be busy.
Hmm.
What is it? They sleep, we grind.
Right, right, right.
Team no sleep. You know what I
Ain't
mean?
no
Like
sleep,
that's just
right.
the
Sleep when you're dead. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
you don't get sleep. I know me personally, when I don't get enough sleep, oh gosh, the day is not going to go well for
Hmm.
me. I
Same.
got a migraine, can't think. Rest is so important. Um, but we do live in a society that values working and being on the go all the time. And it's important to get rest. It's important to recharge. It's good for your mental health. It's good for your physical health. Again, it definitely affects me negatively. Rest is definitely a form of self care, and people are always. I know I get called. My mother calls me lazy a lot, and I'm gonna agree with her a little bit because I do think
Wait, hold up.
I do think I'm a pretty lazy person, but I take my time to rest because I need it. I also have physical things going on, like I have autoimmune disorders, and I can always tell like when I'm doing too much, my body will begin to almost like shut down. I'll get a lot of body pains, fatigue. I'm just like in the bed. And my rheumatologist always says that it's important to rest when you feel like that because if you grind through it, it'll make it worse and you'll end up being sicker longer. So that's kind of where I started to learn to, oh, wait a minute, Jordan. Here's some signs that this is not going to go well for you. You should definitely take a rest. And, I get called lazy for it, but
I don't know about lazy. I mean, I guess you know yourself better than I would know you, but I don't know. I don't see you as a lazy person,
oh,
but
thank you.
so
My mother does. Hi, Mom.
I mean, I always say that, rest and doing nothing is productive.
Yes.
And my therapist will always tell me, like, Takia, just because you have a free space in your calendar does not mean that you're free or that you have to fill it with something. Because, anytime I plan something, I would say, oh my gosh, I got to check my calendar. And I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm free. But then it's like, you literally just have three speaking engagements to back. And then you're going to say the next day, oh, I'm free. How about you rest that day? And so that's something that I'm learning. I'm learning that just because I have a free space on my calendar, no, that needs to be a rest day.
Hmm.
So my therapist has been really like encouraging me to have like a day of rest or like blocking off time for rest like to specifically say like you cannot do anything here because naturally if I see it's free, I'm like, "Oh, I'm free," but not realizing I have multiple things kind of like
Hmm.
coming up or I just finished like a whole bunch of things. And so for me, I often have to tell myself doing nothing is also productive.
Yes, it's definitely important to give yourself time to rest and recharge.
Mhm.
If you don't, it's you'll end up hitting a wall. You'll end up burning out, and then it's like you'll basically be no good to anyone, even yourself, if you're, you're sick or you're just wore down. So it's important to make sure you prioritize getting rest and taking care of yourself. And also making sure you're eating right.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, getting enough water. I can always tell the difference when I'm drinking enough water. And I've been very intentional about it from, I think, like maybe June, maybe almost a year now. I want to say July of last year. I've been very intentional about making sure I get enough water. I'm definitely on track far more days than I'm not. And I can tell a difference in how I feel. I think I've lost like, I want to say like 35 pounds since maybe last July. I got a long way to go, y'all, but I'm working on it.
Hey.
I can always tell when I'm eating better, my mood feels better.
Mm-hmm.
I keep hearing that, there's a link between your like nutrition
Yeah,
and
your
your
gut,
mood,
your
your
gut
gut
health
health.
and brain. Yes, very much so. Think about when we eat something fried, we be like,
Ooh,
oh,
yes.
you got that itis, you feel all heavy and sleepy. But when I'm eating like something that's more on the lighter side, I tend to feel like more
You
energized and
feel
things.
light.
Right.
It's,
So,
it's a connection between those things. So it's important to prioritize, taking care of yourself and getting your rest. This cannot stress that enough. Don't wear yourself down to where you can't do anything. You know what I mean? Because we won't be effective that way.
exactly. And I think, you know, when we talk about like self care, just even thinking about it from the aspect of, yes, it's great. Let's take these vacations and do what we want to do. But like, even in terms of like, sometimes I will tell myself something that I haven't done it in a while, but well, I did do it because I went to see The Little Mermaid. But one of the things that I was really, really intentional about that I would do, and I need to get back to it, is I would go to the movies
Oh
once a
yeah.
month by
Mm-hmm.
myself. Now, I would invite somebody, but if they're not available or anything like that, then that's fine. But I enjoy my company. I am very fine doing things by myself. And I would go to the movies. I would go during a Wednesday around noon because I know there weren't going to be really anyone, there wasn't going to be anyone there. And like that was also a form of self-care for me, just going to the movies once a month because I mean, I have a subscription to the Cinemark thing, so I get the free tickets. But I would just go. It's something about being in the movie in the dark, the big screen TV. I love movie theater popcorn.
I was gonna say she goes for the movie, but she stays for the popcorn.
Right.
She does love movie theater popcorn.
I do. I do. And so like to me, like that's something that's like a me thing. Like I love, to it's something about it. I don't know, but it's just like a whole experience. I feel like I escape from life. I went to go see like Clifford the Big Red Dog by myself. I saw like the new Space Jam movie by myself. Like I just and I find that it's just time and it's also like learning I have learned just to be comfortable like by myself. A lot of people they feel like they always have to be around people or they can't do something like or they won't go somewhere on their own. Like Jordan knows I went to see Lizzo twice by myself. One time was for my birthday in September last year and then I saw her in May of this year and like just doing some things by myself is self-care, but then I have moments where I need to be around people
Mm-hmm.
is also a form of self-care because we do need community. We
Right.
need to socialize and to feel supported. So I just think we really have to open our minds in terms of what self-care is because I just think again it's just limited to external things like you kind of talked about. So yeah.
Yeah, and it made me think about. I'm glad you mentioned about the movie because I've been meaning to ask you about that because I haven't heard you say you've gone to the movies in a while. I've been meaning to ask you about this for a while, but I forgot. Now you rejogged my memory. I'll make sure I ask you next month. Um, One of the big things with me with self care, this is kind of low key embarrassing maybe, but I can always tell when I'm not doing well because I don't keep up with my doctor's appointments. Like it's important to make sure that you're on top of your physical health stuff
Mhm.
too, because it's also internal. And I know for me, like you can always bust me out and you can tell if I'm doing well mentally or not. Because if you ask me, hey, Jordan, when's your next rheumatology appointment? And I can't tell you that my appointment is actually in not even 2 weeks now, like a week and a day, I think. If I can't tell you what my next appointment is, I might not be doing so hot. For a long time, like I would not keep up with my doctor's appointments, wouldn't keep up with the dentist, wouldn't keep up with anything, and I felt it. Like I ended up feeling poorly. I wasn't taking my medication like I was supposed to. Like that's a thing for me.
Mm-mm.
Even with mental
Mm.
health
I
medication.
know. I know exactly where you're going.
Yeah, don't be like me. Take your medications as prescribed. Um, yeah, just trying to get on track with my physical stuff. So that's also been another thing that I've been doing over the past year, making sure I'm going to my doctor's appointments, making sure I'm taking my medication, prioritizing my wellness because that will also, play a big role in me being effective and helping other people and of course caring for myself.
Yeah, and I think what comes to mind for me is when you talk about wellness, just thinking at it as like a whole picture. Because
Mm.
there are, and I can't think of all of them off the top of my head, but there are 8 dimensions of wellness:
Yes, social,
intellectual,
intellectual.
financial.
Hmm.
I can't think of, y'all just gonna have to Google it, but it's like it is 8 dimensions of wellness. And so it's like occupational as
Hmm.
well. So then it's like when you look at these 8 dimensions, asking yourself like, am I fulfilled in all of these areas? Because if you aren't, then you're not going to feel well. You're not going to feel whole, spiritual. Like, where does spirituality fall into, wellness and like self care? And so that's kind of like how I look at it. And then also, I think part of self care is being self aware,
Oh, ooh.
because like sometimes people have been like sick or like depressed for so long that they don't even know what it feels like to feel well.
Mm.
Like I remember when I was experiencing depression so much to the point that like I didn't know what it was like to not be suicidal or depressed. Like that's all I knew.
Yep.
And when I started to feel well, I would kind of revert back because depression felt like a warm blanket. I would be like, "Oh
Yes.
my gosh, this is what I know. This is what's comfortable." So the minute I start feeling well, I'm like, "Ooh, no, we ain't going we don't want that."
Yes.
Because it felt uncomfortable.
Right.
And now that I have this level of like self awareness, I know, like, okay, when I'm starting to feel well, or when I am feeling well, and if I notice certain things like I'm starting to isolate, or I'm not taking care of my hygiene, or I'm struggling to be productive and get my work done, I'm not really eating, I'm not I stopped going to the gym and just things like that. So now I know that if there is a pattern that's happening, so
Hmm.
I'm not tending to myself, and it's happening over 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It's
Right.
like, okay, something is going on. So I also think knowing, it's just important to know, to know what do you look like when you're at your best and what you look like when you're at your worst, because sometimes you've been at your worst for so long that you can't even remember what your best looks like.
Yeah, I think this is why it's important for trainings like RAP, for instance. If you can find a training in your area, definitely look it up. Wellness Recovery Action Plan, right?
Hmm. If I will offer one, if people say that they want to actually take it, I usually do it, but I usually do it for like peers. But but
Gotcha.
but it's really for anybody.
Hmm.
And I actually was talking to my therapist about this and saying that I actually wanted to do one specifically for Black women, like
Mm.
a rap for Black women.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think I could make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, it really goes into depth as far as being aware of yourself and again signs that things might not be you might be becoming depressed or any signs or triggers or y'all get what I'm saying. Like it's good that you have that a training like that can make you aware of yourself.
And two, yes, and when we're talking about self care, like setting boundaries is self care.
Oh,
Saying no as a
oh no,
complete
yes.
sentence is self care. I don't want to. Like I saw this quote on social media and it said like, I don't want to is like good enough. It was like I don't want to is like it's like it's good enough to say like you don't want to. Like you don't have to have an explanation. The explanation is I don't want to. So, I think, and that's what some people tend not to think about, that like having boundaries, not just with other people, but like with yourself. And like a boundary for myself is like, I know that I need to be sleep before 9 o'clock because I know how hard it is to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
My butt keep wait until 11, then I get up at 4, like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. But a boundary for myself would be sticking to my bedtime.
Mhm.
A lot of times we just think boundaries, oh, it's for other people, but it's more so about protecting ourselves and
Right.
making sure that we are preserving our mental health and our energy and making sure that we're staying healthy. So I say that, saying no and setting boundaries is also a part of self-care.
Yeah, for sure. We might have to do an episode on boundaries.
Oh yeah.
Boundaries is actually pretty deep. I'm just thinking about like codependency and different things that would make it hard
Hard.
to set healthy boundaries. We might have to come back to that.
Yeah, we gonna okay. Episode on setting boundaries coming soon.
Yeah.
We'll be sure to bring a clinician to be a part of that conversation.
Yes, for sure. I'm glad that we had this conversation about self care because again, it's definitely eh, I know it's going to be important for me to follow through with some of my self care stuff in this season with my father's death coming up, and yeah,
Yeah, I mean, are we going? Is that it? Are we gonna go
want
to
to
the
move
next
on? All right, yeah, let's move on.
topic, or not the next topic, the next segment rather?
So for today's spotlight, we would like to bring awareness to someone who has either passed away or has survived a suicide attempt. Definitely for someone who's passed away, we want to keep them in our remembrance, keep them in our hearts, keep them close. And for today, it is Dr. Nakita Mortimer. She actually just passed away on May 24th, I believe, and she was a resident doctor at a hospital in New York, and she was training to become an anesthesiologist.
Mm-hmm.
And she passed away by suicide. She was actually very vocal in trying to get her hospital to unionize to make things better for resident doctors. She was very involved. It sounds like she's very loved. I was reading some articles about her. She was well known in the community as far as in the medical field. And we just want to shout out Dr. Mortimer. Rest in peace.
And love and light to her family,
Yes.
and people who knew her, because it's it's really hard. Like I just, we know what it's like to be in a space of struggling with suicidal ideation and like having an attempt. Like it's very hard and it's very complex. There's a lot that goes into um I think a person actually making the attempt. But again, we definitely want to honor her, because that's the main reason that we have this podcast is we want to make sure that we are honoring people who have passed and are also survivors, to just let people know that they're not alone, and it can eventually get better, but it's just unfortunate that we still do lose people, to suicide, which I feel like why this podcast is so important.
Yes, for sure. So, for today's resource, we're going to shout out the NAP Ministry.
Yes,
And this is by Miss Tricia Hersey.
we gonna bring her here. We gotta get her on a
Man,
podcast.
listen, the NAP Ministry is about resting. If you've ever heard like the term rest is resistance, you can link that back to the NAP Ministry. And it's the importance of literally being able to rest. It's so important for your body, for your mental health, for your physical health, just to be able to pour into yourself and pour into others. It's so important that we rest. We're trying to, well, her organization is trying to take a step away from the grind culture.
Right.
It's not, in a lot of ways it's unhealthy because it's so important to rest and recharge.
Absolutely.
And I like that she said like to recharge, not to jump into something else,
Mm-hmm.
but to recharge just to be good for you. Like
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a genius organization.
Yes.
You can check them out at the napministry.com.
Yes. And so for our next segment, which is one of our new segments that we just added,
Yeah.
the Community Changemaker, where we are highlighting mental health, Black mental health professionals, whether that it's therapists, psychologists, social workers, peers. And so for today's episode, we are spotlighting one of my favorites, Dr. Amber Thornton. She is a clinical psychologist. She's the host of Balance Work and Mama podcast. She's a millennial motherhood wellness expert, a mother of two, and a wife. And I love what she's doing because her goal is to help moms find balance.
Mm,
And what a perfect I feel like spotlight for her because we've been talking about self-care.
right.
A lot of times moms don't do a great job at taking care of themselves and they always think about themselves as an afterthought. And
Mhm.
so Dr. Thornton or Dr. Amber Thornton is doing a great job at making sure moms are finding balance, and also she's like do like debunking in terms of like default parenting, like where a lot of times things tend to fall on the mom, and the mom tends to be the one that's carrying, like she's working, she's managing the household, and like really working on like helping moms with like setting boundaries and making sure that their needs are being met. So I love what Dr. Amber is doing. So definitely check her website out, which is www.balanceworkingmama.com. But then she also is on social media with it's Dr. Amber Thornton, and I'll be sure we will have her website as well as her social media handles in the show notes and then on YouTube in the description box. And yeah, y'all check Dr. Amber Thornton out. She's doing great things, and she's also in the DMV area too. So,
Guess we love a local. Okay, so for today's moment of inspiration, it's going to come from Tricia Hersey with
hey,
a
you got to back up.
I missed something.
Self care.
Self care. Yes. So
Yes, we talked about self care, but we need to talk about currently what we're going to work on doing or things that we have done because we want to hold ourselves accountable to practice self care.
okay. So last time I mentioned that I was going to do some reading. Fail. Definitely did not get to pick up any reading. I'm so disappointed in myself. But it's okay. I'm going to make the same goal with the hopes that next time I'll do some reading for leisure and not for work or anything like that, but just for pleasure. That's going to be my goal.
Yeah, so for me, there are two things that I want to do. One is getting back to my sleep schedule,
Mm.
and the other is I want to read for at least 30 minutes per day. I said that I could do it, but right before I go to bed,
Mhm.
because I started Viola Davis' book in December and I still haven't finished it, and I really do want to finish it, but I always get sidetracked doing something else or caught up on TikTok or whatever. So my goal is definitely to finish Viola Davis's book because I actually really do enjoy like reading, especially like autobiographies, and I like reading rags to riches stories,
Mhm.
like so I definitely my goal is definitely getting back to reading at least 30 minutes per day. Um Ideally one book per month. So reading and getting back on my sleep schedule. So I guess we both have the goal to read.
Yes, and I appreciate you for giving like a smart goal cuz you have
Yes.
how much you want to read. Well, for how long you want to read, how many books you want to read. I should be more specific like
Yeah.
that.
I don't know if people know what SMART goals are, but SMART is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound.
Yes. These are goals that you should, it-
It helps you to be specific in terms of the goal instead of people like, I don't know. Like, yeah, like I want to write a book, but okay, when do you want to write that book by? What are you going to do every day to help you get to that? So just kind of breaking it down into like milestones to reach your
right.
overall goal.
Right. Yes. Thank you for mentioning that. I should incorporate that into my life. I've learned it. So, for today's moment of inspiration, it's coming from the NAP Ministry and the founder, Tricia Hersey. And I'll read to you guys a quote. We are not resting to recharge so we can do more. We are simply resting. We are resting because it's our divine and human right. It's not connected to more output. I need y'all to get this.
Yeah, for real.
Yes.
Like, yeah, and that resonated with me because I am Miss Do Too Much. I'm always have 5,000 things going on and like just need to know when to like Takia, chill out, girl. Like I am literally like Speedy Gonzalez or like always have the zoomies just going all the time. So and telling myself like just rest just because nap like resting shouldn't be a reward.
Right.
Just doing it just because our body needs it. So, yeah.
Thank
Well,
you guys for tuning in.
that wraps up another episode
Yes.
of the Black People Die by Suicide 2 podcast, and we'll catch y'all on the next episode. This episode was sponsored by the Mental Health Empowerment Agency, where its mission is to dismantle the mental health stigma and raise awareness of suicide prevention through curated events, individual and group peer support, digital and social media, and educational trainings.